All right, recording is in progress. We are in week 1, day 4. Today is going to be Python review day, and y'all can see my screen, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to change. Okay. So we're gonna kind of run through Python. You did JavaScript review on Thursday. Let's see. So we're starting the fundamentals. These are good to know. I'm not sure if you'll be asked these things in an interview, but definitely good to get kind of that background on Python. First created by, I guess, Guido van Rossum, probably said the name wrong, in 91. It is an object-oriented, interpreter-based, high-level language. And it always requires an interpreter, CPython, which in the background is written in C. This is a dynamically typed language, so you don't have to identify types. It does all that in the background in the interpreter. This Python is great because you don't have to remember to use brackets. Like JavaScript, you gotta make sure to have those closing brackets and make sure they're all lined up perfectly. But with Python, it's just based on your spacing. So it could pose some problems, but at least you don't have to forget a semicolon or a bracket somewhere and your whole code doesn't run. And it is written, so JavaScript, you typically use camel case, which is, the small letter. Let's pull a code. Let me get up some VS Code here. So I am working on a Windows machine. I got my WSL in here. Okay. So if I want to code, let's pull up code together. If I want to see where I'm at right now, this kind of review to day 1. How do I see where I'm at in my terminal here?
WD.
You said PWD?
Yeah.
Yep, there we go. How do I see what's in here? Because I think I want to code in a file. How can I see what's in this current
LS.
LS? Good. Okay, so I have my Gulf evening and weekend directory. So I'm gonna go ahead, I shouldn't have had you all say that. I'm gonna go ahead and move into the Gulf evening and weekend directory. What do I have in here? It looks like I have a full stack example. I don't think I need that anymore. That's from a previous class. How do I remove this out of my directory?
Is it RM? And then if there's files in there, or what? RM space dash F? I'm kind of trying to reach back here.
Let's try RM first, and we'll see. Oh, it can't remove that, probably because I do have files in there. If we want, to bring this up, let's bring this up and look at it in code before I delete it to make sure that I do want to delete it. How can I do that?
Code and then the file name.
Let's try that. We're going to code full stack example. Yep, came up on my other screen. And there we are, we got code. Looking at it, this is a whole bunch of weird stuff and it doesn't even open. So what happened is the other day I saw this and I used my File Explorer through Windows to go ahead and try to delete this directory. Thought I deleted it, right-clicked it, pushed delete, and it was moving through things, but there's still things that do not delete out from the File Explorer. So we're going to use our terminal to force this to delete fully. So we will get out of here and go back. And you said, what
It's
was the other one?
RM space dash RF, and then
Okay.
the file, I guess, the directory
Okay.
name.
Now, this is a powerful command. Don't use this unless you want to just wipe it off the face of the earth. So this will recursively go in and remove everything out of that directory and then go ahead and delete that as well. So There we go. Nothing's in here. Golf evening and weekend is completely empty. How do I create a file to code in for this example?
Touch to make a new one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Now let's make a new one. Touch. Let's just name it example done, and we're doing Python. PY. Okay, and there it is. So we'll code. And what's another way we can do this instead of opening up the file? I want to open up this whole directory that I'm in right now.
Code, space, and then period.
Sure, this is all review, but it's good to get used to this and just make it second nature. Because as you see, File Explorer can do things, but maybe sometimes it can't do it well. So, okay, so here we are in VS Code. I am going to pull back up here. Okay, so we were talking about, pull that up to the other screen. We're talking about that JavaScript traditionally references things in camel case, which is the small letter in the beginning and then the capital letter right afterwards, just string it all together. Python is going to typically use snake case. So you'll do the underscore in between for your variables. And you can also, for classes, they will typically be referred to in Pascal case, which is like snake case, but it's capital letters.
That's called scale as in S. Oh, Pascal. Okay.
Pascal, yeah. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. That's just how I read it. So variables, these are names for storing values. Of course, we know that. And it says in the README in math class, we use X and Y. We tend to not want to use X and Y when we're coding, just because those are not very descriptive. I have no idea what X and Y stands for, what those values are supposed to be. So variables, we want to define a little bit more explicitly. Unlike JavaScript, Python, you can just simply set a variable to a value. So in JavaScript, we did, let or var, all that. But in Python, we can simply do, we can do variable equals and then my value. And now variable is defined and we can call it again and again. There is no concept of constants in Python. Instead, we're going to, it says we would identify a constant variable using all capital letters. And this can also be kind of considered like a global variable. Well, so this definition will now be, you can see it's like a constant. You can call it all throughout this file. It is defined globally, not locally. Let's see. This README jumps all over the place. Okay, we're going to, instead of, okay. So one of the important things is to know how to see things in your terminal. In JavaScript, it's console log. Does anybody know what it is in Python?
Print.
Print.
Print, yeah. So we're going to print our variable. Never name a variable. And how do I run a Python file in the terminal? Does anybody know?
If you don't have the alias made, it would be Python 3, but if you do, you can just make it Python.
I don't think I have the alias. We'll see. And then just that, or
Yes.
And the name of the.
Yeah, the name of the file.
Okay.
Yeah, so-
okay.
yeah.
I get out of this. I don't really work in Python a lot, so does anybody know how to exit the interpreter?
I think Control C. Does that not work?
Either
Yeah.
Control C or Control D.
It is Control D. Control C does not work. Yeah, I always try a couple of those. I'll do like \Q, just whatever to try to get out of there. So Control C. So we're going to, or Control D, sorry. We are going to Python 3 and then the file name.
Yeah,
And again,
example.py.
yes, if you don't know, you can tab and it will autofill if there's something that's matching the first few letters that you've typed in. So that's kind of handy. But that did not print anything. So why did that not work?
Because your file isn't saved.
Yes.
Thanks. I think it was Eunice that caught that for me. Times.
That is important. Yeah, if you're running something and nothing's working the way it should, try saving and then try again. And so we can see prints it out to the console, just like we want. Let's see. So next we're going to talk about data types. Strings, anything ending in or enclosed in quotes here. We can use single quotes or double quotes. And it'll still, they're both going to be strings. I thought you would be able to hover over. Maybe that's only in JavaScript. A lot of times you can hover over and see the type in VS Code, but maybe not in Python. Okay, so we can do single quotes or double quotes, doesn't matter. There will be some requirements for other things we do. If we want to do the interpolation of putting a variable to print out within a string, then we do have to use double quotes. So we're going to print the variable, but we want to add it into a sentence. To add the variable into a sentence, we're going to start with F. It's going to be called an F string. You'll hear that a lot, and double quotes. So now we can reference variables throughout our code, and it will copy that value into our string. So this is my, and to call those, we'll do curly brackets. And again, tab to autofill. Comment out that line. We're going to save it so that it actually works. And it takes the value from our variable and plugs it into the sentence. F string with double quotes to do this. Another variable type are numbers. Of course, you can have floats, you can have integers. So we won't go on that. We can have, we're just going to look at these here now. We can do Booleans. This is not changing much from JavaScript. And we can have a none type as well, which is like a null. We have our lists now. Let's see. Lists, again, hold different values. They can be anything. You can have lists of strings, lists of numbers, lists of dictionaries, lists of lists, and you'll see that a lot when you're pulling in data from API calls. Let's see. We're just going to keep referencing this. Once you put something in a list, it stays there forever until you alter the list. So when you define days of the week, they will always be there like that until we change the list with specific functions or add to it. You can access these values in the list by using the index. So we'll come back to VS Code here and do some examples. So we'll have and again, we're in Python, so we're going to use the snake case. Oops. File list. We're going to make this a list of some fruits. Bananas. double quotes, you can use single quotes too. Yes. For strings, double or single, doesn't matter. Bananas, apples, and okay, so how do we target the bananas in this list? How would we, let's assign it to a variable first. So we'll say my fruit. How do we target bananas?
It'll be my list, square brackets, 0.
All right, that is right, because we know when counting through a list, the index always starts at 0. So 0 will reference the first thing in our list here. If y'all don't know, when you click on a line, if you control /, it'll comment out the line in VS Code. So that's just a quick way to comment out without having to do the hashtag or #, however, what your age is to refer to that. Okay, we're gonna save this and of course we gotta print it. My fruit. Okay. And yes, that got bananas. So that is how you will reference different things within the list. You pull it by its index. Okay. This back over. Next up are dictionaries. I know this can be kind of a daunting thing when you are first learning how to code. It may not make a lot of sense in the beginning, but it is just a list of key value pairs. So you'll have a key, like name, age, you have date of birth, address, some specific item that you need a value for. And then the second part is going to be the value. And in the dictionaries, you can mix and match. As you can see here, we have a string as the value for name. We have an integer as the value for age. And you can also have lists as a value for a key and so on and so on. It's mix and match to your style. It's a good place to hold a lot of information that you need to reference. You can grab it by the key name. So let's do, I am horrible at coming up with examples. We'll just use there. So a user, and to do a dictionary, you can sometimes hear it referred to as an object. In Python, it's a dictionary though. And it is in curly brackets. So we have the name is our key. And we'll do this little colon, and then the value is you need commas between every item within your dictionary, otherwise you will have some issues because it doesn't like your colon there. It's kind of letting you know, oh, we're gonna say I'm 21. That's a good age. So make sure you remember the columns between each item within your dictionary. Let's do list of pets. And I'm going to make this a list. I have 2 dogs, so they are going here. Okay. Okay, so does anybody remember, without looking, how to access one of these values? Since it's a little different, it's not like a list. I can't use an index, so how can I get? I wanna pull my list of pets.
User square brackets list of pets.
Square brackets.
No
list
space.
Okay. Let's go ahead and print that and see what that gives me. If you're ever not sure, print is your best friend.
I think you'll get an error because of no space, because of the space. between user and the,
All right. And yep, that is correct. You will grab any value you need from your dictionary by referencing the key associated with it. Does anybody know how to get just the list of keys if you don't know what keys you have in your dictionary?
capital O object dot, you said you want the keys or the values?
The keys. I want all the keys within my dictionary.
Capital O object dot keys, and then I believe user in parentheses.
Let's take a look and see what this does. Well, that didn't work.
That's for JavaScript.
Capital O though, the O has to be capital. Oh, that's JavaScript.
Yep, that's the JavaScript way to reference.
Yeah, it auto-corrected the capital O.
Yeah,
Oh,
because there is no, this is not how you work it in Python.
Would it just be user.keys?
User.keys?
Is that it?
With you still need the
The constructor?
yeah, there you go. There you go. That thing.
Okay, let's see what that does. There you are. That is it. The simple. You just dot keys. Give me all the keys in this object. And here you can see I have name, age, list of pets. So that can help you find what you can actually reference in this dictionary. Back here. Any questions on that so far? Good. Okay. Operators, like it says, it's pretty much the same in all languages. You use your plus, minus, asterisk for multiplication. Modulus is still the same between the two, and I know you went over that with JavaScript where it returns the remainder. And we have our double equals or is. You can use is as well. A is B, that will be the same thing as the double equals.
So
And,
within JavaScript, there's the double equals for not specifying the type, data type, and then you have the triple equals. There's nothing like that in Python, is there?
I will have to double check, but I think double equals is the furthest it goes. Let's try it. Let's see if we can even do. So we'll say equals, or again, I'm horrible at coming up with examples on the fly. I'm sorry. Same number. So we're going to see if 4 is equal to 4. So no, it doesn't like that. With Python, we're just using the 2 to explicitly define an equals here. I wonder, I am not sure personally the difference between the single and the double. I would assume it's kind of like Python where the single can be misinterpreted a bit between data types, but the double is going to give you exactly the same data type. If it's not matching, then that won't be true. Oh. Everything go.
actually isn't just, I think single is just you're assigning a variable, right? You're assigning a value.
Oh, yes, of course. That's it.
But I made that mistake myself, so over and over.
I don't work in Python, so I work mostly in C# and PowerShell, unfortunately. But so yes, that definitely sounds right. We can also verify by looking that up later. Within Python documentation. Documentation is a great thing. So if y'all don't have Python documentation bookmarked, you should. It can give you a lot more information than we're giving you here.
I guess from what I just read, it doesn't have a restrictor. It's always equals equals. Unlike JavaScript, you can make it less strict.
Got it. That is good to know. And for the rest of them, again, we have the not equal or is not, greater than, less than. We have our ands and ors. So all is going to be pretty much the same throughout both. It's just that equals does vary a little bit. Which brings us to functions. So with Python, your functions are declared by putting this def in front, and then you will use a name for the function that you will call later, and then your parameter if needed. You can also leave it blank if you want to just call a function and have it do something without passing in a parameter. So here we can say that they're going to pass in a first name. This output is going to equal a string, the interpolation, I can't say that word, where they inject the parameter that was passed in into the string, and then this returns output. So when we call the function, which we call just with the name, and pass in Chad, let's see what it does. No, comment this out. I don't want other stuff populating here. Okay, so tell me what this is going to print out on the screen. What do we expect this function to look like when we call it?
Should say
Hello,
hello,
Chad.
Chad.
It. Let's save it first. I don't know if it saved it. No, I did not. And another little shortcut, if you just push the up arrow in the terminal, it'll bring up your last typed, which you last put into the terminal. So it's an easy way if you're calling something over and over, just push the up arrow. Hello, Chad. Perfect. Okay. Again, these are it's a very simple review, but I think next we're going to do something a little more challenging. We can have our conditional logics. We can evaluate either true or false, and then we can do different outcomes based on that. We have all of our if else's. Do y'all need a little more in depth on the if else logic, or are you good with that? I think in JavaScript it's written a little different, but with our conditionals here, again, you don't need parentheses around these. You can just state it and then the semi or the colon afterwards. So that is a little different between the two. Yeah, we can look at all this, but I think it's gonna be a bit better to we're just gonna practice this in a minute. We have if, else, we also have if, else if. There is one other thing you can do in Python instead of else if. Does anybody know the phrasing for that?
Elif.
Yeah, we can do elif as well, which is basically like an else if. Iteration. Again, let me know if y'all want me to stop and go through some of this stuff, but I'm going to have us practice this in a minute. Looping. Looping is going to be about the same as well. However, our for loops are a bit different. So in JavaScript, you specify like the index and you're going to increment through it. You do your I++ and all that. For Python, it's a little bit easier. You loop through the key value or by the index. And instead of saying for a specific amount, you're going to say for that index in range of is this all together? Okay, no. So in range of 20, the age of 22. So let's copy this over and go back into our code. Okay, so with this, how do we expect this loop to go? Oh, it says it right there. Never mind. I can't even quiz you guys for that. Okay, so this, if you wanted to run up the numbers, you can set a range. So like this, we are starting at 12. And for this in range, you know, this iteration in range of the age and 22. So this is going to start at 12 and then go until 22. You put in two number values. Let's see. Yeah, in this one, you put in two positional arguments, the first being the starting value of the range, and the second being the ending index. Okay. So I got it wrong there. So this is going to range, the range is going to be through the index, not the value. Okay, so then we expect this to iterate from 12, 21 times.
It's going to keep printing the same thing, right? Though, for how it's written out because of the indentation, it's going to print, you are not old enough yet, you are only I, which is going to go all the way up to 22 with that same print. Am I reading that right?
So it's going to iterate. So this I value is going to change. That's what's going to step up each time. So let's see. We'll see what it does. Did not the index. Okay. I am getting this very confused. I'm sorry. But for this one, you start at 12 and then we're going to print you're not old enough. You are only 12 because we're starting at 12 years old. Come back when you're older. Then it loops again. It steps up one. It's going to go to 13 now. So 13, is that the index of 22? No, not yet. So it's going to print you are not old enough yet. You are 13 years old. Now we're incrementing another. Now we're at 14. Come back. I is 14. Is it within the range yet? No. So it keeps doing that. It increments up one each time and checks it against this ending, which I think is the value, not the index. This is a weird example.
Tiffany, it looks like it's working like how slicing works, where it starts at the index and then goes up to, but not including that last number.
Oh, yes, that's probably so. It's each four is going to, well, let's read the README. But that is what it seems like it's doing. It seems like it's setting I to start at index 12 and then increment up through index 22. Either way, I can look into this. This is a little bit confusing of an example for me, but you can
What was
loop
the problem? What was wrong?
it. This says that the second is the ending index.
Okay, so this will only print up to number 21 for the range. Because the range operator, I mean the range function will only go up to one less than the max.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we will come back to that because I'm just going into a confusing loop in my head. But for loops within the range of something, we put in two values, a starting and an ending. And again, if it's an index, it's going to be one less than this. So that's what we can we'll trust that and go with that. Reference. Here is a little more to get you used to that. So this is a little bit more understandable here. So for X in range of 6, print it, the range. It doesn't give a starting value, but that's going to assume then that you're starting at index 0. And it'll give you up to index 6, which will be 0 to 5. MDN is great. So we can see it iterated through the index value of 6, which is going to be 5. Again, if you need more clear examples, you can definitely use this link and read through that, kind of practice that. Oh gosh, and then we're already to the end. Looping through a dictionary
One
is a
second,
bit.
I'm still confused as to the indentation piece right here. How is it hitting that print? You are now 21. You can, if it's not indented within, to me, it looks like it's not in the loop, but how is it hitting that last part? I thought it had to be indented to be in the loop. Am I making sense?
Okay, yes, so the final, you're talking about this final one here, the
Yeah,
final print? Okay,
like
let me,
I see it's going through the loop on the indentation. Cool. And then it hits its range and it's done. But how is that?
so it's kind of like, this is going to be at the end. This is actually probably not part of the loop. So if we take this out, and we
Because like
go,
you still,
Here,
like
can I answer this one real quick?
yeah, please. Sounds
So the last line it says print now your and then I, right? And then it actually stores the value of I that was the last one in the list. So if I goes from 1 to 21, right? So
right.
the last value that's stored in I is 21. So then it exits the loop and it remembers that it's 21 and then it prints it on that next line.
Oh, what? So it creates a value. The for loop creates a value somewhere, and it just
Yeah, the
remembers.
variable I is in the for loop, but it's stored when you exit the for loop as well until you like define I as something else later on in the code.
Oh,
Yeah.
I did not know that.
yeah, because right now we're not in a function. So we're not exiting our code at all here. We're just kind of continuing on through. If this was like within a
Okay.
function and a locally defined, then when we returned, yeah, that would kind of scratch everything out.
Okay. Tracking now. That's something new I did not realize happens. Is that just in Python or does that happen in JavaScript as well?
Good question.
Because I think JavaScript just contains it within the loop, correct? Anyone?
I think you could do the same thing because this is kind of how I do automations and stuff at work. You can just type a whole bunch of stuff in a script and just have the computer will read through everything. And until you change the scope, it'll hold on to all those variables. So right
Okay.
now we've got this one big page. So all these variables are available throughout this, except for here. This
Yeah, I
is
guess where I was confused is this, I didn't know for I was creating a variable within the global scope. Okay, I'm tracking
yes.
now.
Yep,
That's something new
because
that I didn't recognize before. That little bit of info. Cool.
Because in JavaScript, you do let I equals 0 to start
Yeah.
at the beginning. So here we don't have to do the let to define a variable because it's Python. So it
Okay.
just, yep, holds it
Got
right
it.
up there in the beginning.
Okay, I'm tracking. Cool.
Coming with the hard questions. That's good. Okay, and the last one they have is looping through a dictionary. Um, I think looping through a dictionary is a bit easier. You will for your key in your dictionary name, and it just keeps going through all the keys. And this could be anything. You can say for apple, like I had if we do a dictionary of fruits and have descriptions after the fruits, we could say for fruit in our fruit list or fruit dictionary. And it will just iterate through each one. And yes. Oh, and we already look. We're ahead of the game. We already understood we can see each of these keys by doing keys. Okay, so this was kind of a really quick run through, and it's kind of, I feel like it's missing some things that you would need, but we're going to change up to what I had planned to do today. And we are going to, well, first, would you all like to take a break? We've been here about an hour now. 10-minute break, sound good? Kind of, let me stop recording here real quick. Welcome back. And let me pull up my VS Code. We are going to be doing a coding problem together, walking through And I'm going to have y'all kind of lead me through this. So we have a fresh page here. So what we're going to do is we are going to write a function that accepts a string, and it will count how many X's and O's are in that string. And then I want to return the count of those X's and O's. So what is the first thing I should do when I get a coding problem like this?
Can you share your screen so we see your VS Code?
No, you all just have to imagine. Here,
Okay.
let me now you can
Sudoku?
see the blank VS Code. Yes, correct?
Sweet. Yep.
Okay. So yes, first thing would be to share your screen with whoever's asking the coding problem.
So like Megan mentioned in the chat, maybe we should pseudocode it first.
Yes, that is a great idea. We definitely want to pseudocode, want to take our time with this. So we
Are
just
you able to put the question of the problem in the chat?
yeah. Let me in the chat. Oh, come on here. Windows are being difficult on this side. Okay, so we want to return. Okay. Hmm. Oh my gosh, how do I access the chat? I don't use Zoom.
I got it. I can type in the chat and then you can keep typing
Okay.
in the VS
Okay.
Code.
So we're gonna put it here. So we want a function that accepts a string, counts how many X's and O's are in it, and returns the count. So this should be pretty straightforward, simple problem. Multiple ways to solve it, but we can get fancy and we don't have to. I am going to limit this to say you cannot use the count list comprehension, and you cannot use any imported libraries or any built-in things from Python. So we're just going to write a full function for this. So first thing we want to do, it's best to understand what your input is going to be and what your output is going to be. So with our input, we want it to be a string. Okay. And then our output, what do we want the output to be?
A number. So like a integer.
We want just one number, or I want
So
to
it'd be,
return.
Yeah, X's and O's, so two numbers, I guess.
yeah, two different numbers.
It doesn't really clarify how you want it returned, though, if you want it as a dictionary or
Yes, good questions. These are the kind of clarifying questions. If you get presented a problem like this, make sure to ask all these questions so you know how to code it. So I didn't specify how I want it returned. But since you asked, I want it returned. We'll start off easy. Well, the dictionary would be easy, but we'll just kind of more basic. We'll start off a little more basic. I want to return a string that says X and then the number of X's and then O and the number of O's. Okay. So we have our input as a string and an output. What should I do next?
Yeah, define the function.
Okay, we're going to define a function. Let's go ahead and we'll define the function, and then you could pseudocode it, but we'll just go ahead and define it here. So let's call it, again, be pretty specific on naming your functions and your variables. Try to pick out a name. I should have y'all name it. A name that matches what the function does. is preferable so that when other engineers are looking at it, they will be able to tell what this function is supposed to do, even if you don't have code around or comments around it. So what's a good name for this function? I'm going to start calling on people because I hear the same like 2, 3 people talking the whole time. So let's do Danielle. What should I name this function?
Count XO.
And in Python, we'll just do count XO like that.
Yep.
Okay. We do snake case and it will take some, it'll take some string. Should we name it string or should we pick a different name for the parameter?
Is string a reserved word? I can't remember.
It very well could be, so we try to avoid those.
So maybe str.
Okay. Then do that. We'll comment down here and we are going to return at the end of it. Okay, so here we have our function. That's going to take our input string. Now let's break this problem apart. What do we have to do for this problem? We're going to have a string. Let's let it be a little bit more. It'll be like X, I, O, X. There, random string. So let's start pseudocoding. What do we need to do with this string once we take it in? What's the first step?
Well, the actual first step I would think would be to create a variable for what you're going to put your answer into.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to create our variables to store our counts. Okay. After we define those variables to store our counts, what's the next step?
Maybe split the string and store each character in an array.
Okay, getting fancy.
Yeah, I feel like that would be something you'd have to do in JavaScript, right? For a string, you have to create a variable to split it. But I don't know if we have to do that in Python.
Yeah, that's a good point. In Python, we can iterate through strings just like we iterate through lists. So most lists, and Phyllis, back me up on this since you use Python a lot more than I do, but I think most list comprehension things will also work on strings as well.
Yeah, that's true. A string is just a list of characters in Python.
So the
Correct.
next step would just be to loop through the string itself.
Okay, we're going to loop through the string. That's good. What do we want to do while we're looping through this string?
Increment the count of X's and O's every time we see it.
That's good. Again, we're sticking high level with our pseudocode. We don't need to get very defined at this point. We're just kind of working through the problem in our head, figuring out how best to solve this. So we're going to increment the counts of X and O. Okay, after we increment the counts of X and O, what are we going to do now? Are we going to stay in our loop?
And then we'll get to the return, because once we have the two variables, then we need to return those variables in the form that they want it returned as.
So then we will return this. Again, this is nice, easy problem, but it's going to get you used to kind of walking through and breaking it down step by step instead of assuming you know. Okay, so we have our pseudocode here. And we'll see if this works for it. It looks like it should. We're going to take in our string. We're going to create variables to store our counts. We're going to loop through the string and then increment the counts of X and O. And then we will return those variables with counts. Okay. So creating variables again in Python. How do we do this?
So just name the variable and then equals.
And we will call this initializing as the technical term for creating. So we will initialize our variables and we can just name them and assign a value. So what should I name these variables? What's a good name for our counts?
X equals quotation X quotation.
Okay, well, if I do this, you said quotation?
Yes.
Okay, so right now, another person coming and looking at this code, I'm like, what is X? What is that variable? I don't know what X means. I don't know what it's supposed to hold, but I do know it holds a string, which I don't know if we want our counters to be a string.
We're going to be incrementing them anyway, so just have it equal 0. So we could just go plus equals each time. But I like what Hamilton put in the chat, because we don't want to just leave it as X, right? You said earlier, just naming a variable X is probably not best practice.
Right, because I don't know what this means. What's X? Where is it plugged in? What is it using? It looks like a math problem. It doesn't give me any context. So let's maybe, we wouldn't have to do much to make this better. Let's maybe just say X count, or, something to kind of show that this is going to hold a count for us. So again, maybe not the best name. Maybe you could come up with a better name, but just kind of making a little bit more verbose so people reading your code will kind of understand the context. Okay, so we have our variables. We've set them both to start at 0 because we're thinking we're going to increment them and store our counts. Okay, now we want to loop through our string. How do we do this? How do I set up this loop? And I'm going to call on somebody.
For character and string.
So we're going to do for character in our string. Okay. Yeah, I think that works. Looking at this, we're assuming that our string is going to look like this. What if one of our inputs looks like that? Are we still gonna, is this good for now? We still like this for character and string?
Yeah, we would need to just account for if it's a capital O or a capital X or lowercase x.
Okay, yeah. We'll look at that. We'll see what we do with how we are going to identify these X's and O's, and then we'll revisit if we need to. So we'll keep it like this for now. Again, kind of considering that we may need to adjust because we do have capitals and we haven't quite set how we're going to identify what's an X and an O. So now we're looping through the string. We want to increment X and O. So how do we want to increment X and O? How do we want to identify our X's and O's?
Use a if a statement. So if the character equals two equals, yeah, and then quote X quote.
If it equals, then what are we going to do if it's an X?
Increment X.
We're going to X count. What are we going to do to that?
Plus plus.
Plus
Is it
plus?
plus equals?
Yeah, I don't know if Python does plus plus.
Python does not do plus plus.
So it's got to be plus equals.
Yes. But we still need something else. It's still saying it doesn't like that. So we got to throw
1.
in the 1. Plus equals 1. Okay, so that will increment if it's an X. And again, I'm already seeing a little bit of a problem, but we'll revisit it later. Right now, it will count lowercase x's, which if we highlight, oh, I don't have an uppercase x.
Did we
We
do
can
something?
everything the lowercase.
Is there anything at like two lowercase like in JavaScript for Python?
Yes, that is a great idea. We will lowercase. Where do we want a lowercase?
I would put it right after, so right at the beginning of the for loop. So what, like a new variable, or turn CHR into lowercase. So it checks CHR lowercase each time.
Yeah, that's good. If it's in the if statement.
Okay, so each time it goes through, you want to,
Oh, in the if statement, put
No.
char to lowercase.
I think it's just lower. Okay, do you think this will work?
No, you have to change the character in line 14 would be the easiest way, then you only have to do it once.
So where do you,
Dot.
where do you,
Yeah, I would do it right after the character in line 14, dot to lower, or dot lower.
In the for itself, the for statement.
Yeah, then you don't have to put it in both the X and the Y. So it just for character dot lower in line 14.
all right, we can try that and we'll see how it works. Does not like that.
So on line number 16, why would we not want to put it there? The lower. I'm just curious because does the lower, if we put it at the for statement, if it were to use it, does it permanently change it? Or is that just a temporary evaluation?
So putting
If
it,
you use it there, yeah. If you were to use it at the for statement, the lower, is that just a temporary change of the character? So when it went to line 16, if we don't have the lower there, it would result back to the original. I'm just wondering.
yeah, well, not sure if that's, but we obviously see it doesn't like that. It doesn't like doing this because right here is where we're defining it.
Yeah, no, I was wrong. I was wrong. Yeah.
So this
Okay.
would be the same as if we were saying, if we were trying to do character dot lower equals a value. So it's not going to work there because that's where we're defining each character in this loop. We can put it here, yes, and that will work. And we'll run with that. We'll run with that for now.
So I think what Mike was asking is, does char.lower change char itself, or does it return a new string that's the lowercase? And I think the answer is the latter. It doesn't modify char itself because strings are immutable in Python. You can't change individual parts of strings, but instead you could create a new string called, or like a lowercase version in the where you said char.lower.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Phyllis is great. She has a lot more Python knowledge than I do right now since I don't work in it. But so she'll know all those little things about what are immutable or not.
Well, Hamilton had a good idea too in the chat. Because I mean, it's not really an issue. I mean, what Mike's doing is good. You could do the next statement if char dot lower equals O, then count Y underscore count equals O. But we're trying to make it so we don't have to do char dot lower to everything. So I mean, it's like tomatoes, you know.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
Hamilton had a good idea in the chat, just to not have to keep redoing the same thing for char in string dot lower. So we're lowercasing the whole string.
Yes, I like this. This would probably be a little bit more optimized so that you're not repeating stuff. Again, nothing wrong with doing it on each variable down here, but it is kind of, this is that refactoring where if you write it once and you notice you're repeating something that may not need to be repeated, you can try to find a way to make it a little bit more efficient. So here, if we put it here, it will change the whole string to lowercase before we even start looping through it. So now when we perform this loop, everything should be lowercase and we don't have to specify between each of these characters. So good. All right, we're accounting for the uppercase and lowercase letters. And we've got our, if it's an X, we're going to increment the X count. And now what should we do next?
Basically copy that statement and change X to O, and then change X count to Y count.
Okay, should I use another if statement? Are we liking the if statement
I would
still?
make an if, because if you did an else, it would just count O for everything.
If we did an else if, you said it
Or
would.
no, if we just did else. I mean, you could do an elif.
Okay. Yeah, we can do, I think this is okay. This will work. To be a little bit more consistent with Python here, maybe we should do an else if. So if it's X, we can increment our X count. If it's not, else if it's an O. So it's another if, but it's just adding it on instead of just doing a whole bunch of if. Phyllis, do you know the exact like what elif does instead of chaining ifs together?
Yeah, that's exactly what elif does. It reads the first if statement, and if that's false, then it goes to elif. But if you did if both times, then it would check both if statements.
Hmm. Excuse me. Well, so okay, we got our X incrementing, we have our O incrementing. Do we need anything else here? Does this look good?
You need an else at the end just to catch everything else, or no? That's okay in Python not to have it.
I mean, if it's not if it doesn't match either of these two, then it's just not going to do anything. So for this problem, that works. For other problems, it might not. If you have a program that's running and it encounters something that's not accounted for, and you don't have like an else or anything, it'll just crash. So a lot of times will want to throw in just kind of a catch-all at the end to at least gracefully exit programs instead of just crashing and unexpected error occurred, that sort of thing. But for this works because it'll be okay if it just doesn't do anything. It's not going to jump to the return. It'll just keep incrementing through this string.
Thank you.
We could, I mean, so, well, we'll just stick with this. We're not going to complicate this one more because y'all will have some challenges to code in a little bit. So, okay, that looks good. We're just incrementing, and then I assume now it's going to go through the loop. It's going to increment and kind of keep track of the counts. So I think we're good to return now. And how do we want to return this? To make it look like this.
I think we'll want to use interpolation.
Okay, so how do I do those interpolations?
You need a F. And
Yes.
you need quotations.
Is it double or single?
Ooh, I don't know if it matters, but I would say single because I've always seen it as
Double, I
single.
think.
Does it need
Does not
double?
matter. However, if you do double and you're trying to actually quote stuff inside, sometimes that can get messy and you have to escape characters. So I would stick with singles so that you can use your double quotations inside. If you're trying to do a, hello, this works. It'll print that. But again, your preference both work. And then we're going to, how should I phrase this? Obviously, we're doing the eggs. how do I get that value from?
Curly brackets,
Curly bracket. And then
the
referencing,
X count, yeah, I would say.
okay, referencing the X count. Okay. And then we have, and we'll do it just like there, a comma, O, curly bracket, and the Y count. Oh, why did I name it Y count? Why didn't y'all tell me that's weird? I just, let's name it O count.
That's for us math lovers. We just do that automatically.
Yeah, I guess. X and Y's, they go together. Okay, so we have our X and O count. So I think our function's finished. How do we call this? Anybody? Daryl, how do I call this function?
You would put the name of the function, so count underscore X underscore O. Yeah, and then open parentheses.
Okay.
And then pass in the string.
All right, and we'll pass in a string of randomness. Okay. And of course, to see it in the console, you need a print statement. Let's save this. What do we expect this to return?
0 and 0.
Yep, should. Let's see. And it does. Awesome. And you can do more here. We'll do our, let's do capital and lowercase, and then a bunch of random letters put in there too. And if we want to count them, we can, but I'm pretty sure this is accurate. Looks like we definitely have 5 X's and it accounted for the uppercase letters. So that's good. And all the O's. All right. So I think this was a success. If we want, we can refactor this. Does anybody know of any way we can make this easier using any built-in Python functions? Does anybody know how to reference either built-in Python functions, like how to use them within here, or third-party libraries? Y'all had an example last class where you had to have a third-party library, correct?
Yeah, was it like import?
Yes.
Talking about at the top?
Yes.
And then whatever the library is.
Okay, so yep, we'll go over that. Because when I went through, nobody really explained how to import or use third-party libraries or other people's. Because let's say I don't want to do this. I don't want to write this function. I just don't feel like it. But Jordan wrote it in something else, and I can just import his function and use it here. So I don't have to write it. So we're going to do that instead. And this one, thankfully, comes built into Python. So we'll just kind of run through that. It is called counter. So it's from Python's collections. And we're going to import counter. And this is just Python wrote a counter. So we can utilize this instead of writing our own counter. And it's going to be X's and O's. So that's good. We have our count. We have our string. Oh, I deleted the return. Oh, gosh. Okay. It'll return a little bit differently, though, at least. Okay. So now we can just use counter within this function. We don't have to do anything special to it, but we will have to assign it to a variable because we're going to want to refer to that variable later in our return. So with this, we can say, we're going to say our counts of X's and O's will come from using counter. And like all functions, counter does have an option to pass in a parameter. So we can read a little bit about it here. Most you can hover over, you can see it's from a class counter, doesn't have an interval. You can read all this stuff if you want. Here in the hovering over the parameter, we can see if given, it counts elements from an input iterable. So as we know, a string is iterable. Or we can initialize the count from another mapping of elements to their counts. So here's some examples here. We can do a counter with a string. So we can count through this string. It's going to iterate through it and kind of gather our counts through there. We can count through dictionaries. We can just count through a mapping, which is just a variable with a value assigned to it. So, but we're gonna use our string. We're gonna count through our string. So this defines that, this defines the using the class and all its functions to count through this string for us. So here we're gonna get a little fancy. We're not going to do anything with it within it. We're just gonna return. So I'm gonna return a dictionary here. Counts of, and we're gonna pass in X. So this is going to use our variable counts for the value of X, which counts for the value of X is going to use counter against our string, but looking for X. If that makes sense. If that doesn't, let me know. I can try to make it a little more clear. Again, this is something in Python. There's documentation for it, so you can go read the documentation to figure out exactly how to use it. Here we're going to do the counts of So with this one, let's first, do we think it's going to account for capital letters? No, we don't think so. No, it does not. So this is limited in that it's just literally going to count what you provided. It doesn't account for capital or lowercase. So if you wanted to make it a little bit better, you can do that logic within the function itself. But this is an example of using somebody else's code within your own. You just import it and you can call it. There's another built-in thing. We can use list comprehension, which is we can do our string dot count, and that is also another built-in Python method, and it is used on iterables and lists, so it'll go through the string and just count whatever you pass in the count. So we would do something like count X. So that's another way you could do it to refactor, make it a little better, but that is stuff you have to look for and learn. So definitely if you don't know where to find these things, just stick with, how you can do it as simple as you need to and then refactor and get fancy when you learn more things, but nothing wrong if it works. If it works, it's great. Pass A, whatever you want to get for it. But so that is it for this problem. Any questions on anything we did here? No? Okay. I am going to stop sharing and then stop recording because we are going to go over our challenges for the morning and kind of what we're going to do for the rest of the day. Again, we'll recap some.